This is my time away from the bullshit of the world. I don't want to think too much. This can be a problem whether it's jiu-jitsu or the gym because there is key moments where you do need to pay attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. When to pay attention. Details matter, not only at BJJ, but in the gym. Now, we've all had that experience where we've been at jiu-jitsu class, we've just shown up, we're not really dialed in, and the class goes by and you think, what happened? I did the class, great, I'm happy. I cannot remember for the life of me what the hell happened. And I think I've had similar experiences in the gym where I've shown up, started doing my workout, maybe got on my phone a bit, had a convo with someone, and then I'm like, I get to the end of the workout and I'm like, what did I do? Like I've just gone, that wasn't necessarily a good use of time because I did not pay attention. So I wanted to talk about why details matter and how we can enhance our focus when we're doing BJJ or we're in the gym.
Yeah, nice.
So I have found where I've been doing a technique in jiu-jitsu, a guard, a pass for like a number of years. And then I either train with someone who's way better than me or someone who's really good at it, and they show 2 or 3 details. And I'm like, how come no one ever showed me that before? I've been doing this shit wrong for years. That's why I'm no good at this. And then once I learn those details, it's a huge unlock. And I wish how often have you heard, I wish I knew that sooner?
Yeah.
Whether it be life or anything, right? And so has there been an instance like this for you, Joe, where you've loved an element of the game, jiu-jitsu game, and you've been doing a certain move or whatever, and then someone said, oh, hey, man, maybe try this. And it was big win for you.
Yeah, I was thinking like, I don't know, I can't remember who told me, but it was, you learn these different guards, right? When you're going through your jiu-jitsu journey, you learn, in the gear, spider guard, X guard, single leg X, etc. And I used to fuck with all of those a little bit. Back then, single leg X wasn't a thing, but it was like spider, lasso, X guard,
open guard.
And I just found I was pretty ineffective with them. Like X got reasonably okay for me, but the round, I was just like, man, I fucking suck at these. Like I get to the position, I got the grips, got the foot position, and then they just break my grips, pass my guard or whatever. And I'm like, man, these guards suck, obviously.
Nothing to do with you.
But someone said to me like, you're not putting any weight into the grips. Okay. So they're like, you need to get your hips off the ground so that more of the weight is on the person that I'm doing it to.
Right, yeah.
Right. So so I got the spider guard, but instead of me just sitting my butt on the ground and all my weight being on the floor, lift my hips up and pull into my grips.
Yeah.
So that now they're carrying my weight.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, there you go. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Like it just wasn't being effective because there was no weight behind what I was doing.
And no one had told you that before.
No. And and it was more like, I was like, shit, how did I not realize that? And I still probably habitually don't do that very much. I just don't fuck with those guards anymore. Yeah. But that was one of those cases where it's like, I knew the guard. I knew where the foot needed to be, the grips. I knew the setup. I knew some submissions from there, but I could never make that guard work.
Right.
So I just didn't ever play with it until someone's like,
do this.
Put weight into it. Yeah.
And you found that like was able to make it more effective.
Yeah. Then you're like, holy shit, now this person's, I can see they're struggling to keep their base under my spider guard, or, they're like, it's burning their energy.
They're off balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I have a similar example, but from Top Game. I got this from Robert Drysdale. He was talking about how you have to transfer your weight into them. So if you're passing, like he was talking about Toriando from like a pressure, because like I always thought Toriando was more of a bit of a movement, like you whippy and dippy. He was like, no, you get those grips and you shove their knees into their chest. And like he was all about, like he's a big human, but he was talking about make sure your weight is into them. Like you get side control, you tripod, you put your shoulder in, like don't just lie there. Like he's like the person in guard, the way he looked at it, because he's a very like kind of Top Game oriented guy. He was like, gravity is with you. Make the guard player suffer by carrying your weight. And that was reinforced when I went to Sao Paulo and they play a lot of pressure. they're like, nah, like you get your hips high and drive your shoulder into their stomach, put your head under their neck. Like they must feel your weight times 10.
Yeah.
And that will drain them, like that cooks them, right? And so I learned, whereas before I thought passing was more about like being evasive or something, you know, like just
tricky timing,
get around the legs and jump and, you know, like I just didn't really understand pressure passing.
Yeah.
And then once I kind of learnt this idea of using the pass to tire the person out, cook them a bit, it makes them easier to submit.
Yeah.
And Fabio said something similar. Fabio Gurgel was like, why would you take 10 seconds to pass someone's guard to just have them re-guard and have to do it again? He's like, even though it seems inefficient, take a minute or 2 minutes to just grind them out. So when you pass, they're just like, oh,
yeah,
take me now. Like, just take the arm. I give up, you know? He's like, because that's only 2 minutes work out of 10 and you submitted them. And so I was like, wow, they're really thinking about how they can use the physicality of the pass to kind of to win the match. And I, you know, no one had ever taught me that. So once I learned that, I was like, all right, I can get on board with that. And that's just one approach, but it changed the way I did jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Now let's just flip this for a second and talk about like slightly different details. Is there been a time in the gym or in the realm of movement where someone showed you a detail and you were like, that changed the way you looked at that movement or how effective you were with the exercise?
Yeah, shitload.
Is there one that stands out, like whether it might be handstands or it might be rings or any kind of a lift? Do you need the best inside information on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I have the answer for you. It is Tap, Nap, and Snap, the Jiu-Jitsu newsletter. We have partnered with them to help you guys connect to the latest happenings, drama, gossips, and goings-on in the BJJ world. We even have our own little section dedicated to helping you move better for BJJ. So if you're interested to find out more, click the link below and get connected with Tap, Nap, and Snap, the BJJ newsletter.
Yeah, like trying not to be too obscure about it, but I remember I was working on shoulder stands on the rings.
Yep.
Which is, you know, for folks who aren't familiar with it, it's where you're like upside down. You look, it's kind of like a handstand, but you have bent arms. Yep. So, you know, your hands are in by your sides.
It looks cool.
And you're up at an almost vertical angle. Looks way harder than it is, incidentally. But I was doing them on the rings. I just sort of learned to do it, and I was fucking around. And I remember a friend who was elite in the movement game sent me a message, and she said, "Are you open to feedback on your shoulder stand?"
This is something that.
Well, actually, I adopted that. I was like, "That's a beautiful entry."
Joey says this to me, but I don't think we're past the stage of saying, "Are you open to it?" Joey says, "I got feedback for you, man." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm sitting down. Yeah, let's go."
Well, yeah, I mean, I think for like, you know, like say in a business context, it's like it's open season all the time.
It is.
But with the training thing, particularly on social media, it's like people aren't necessarily ready for that, right? And so you're trying to prime for entry. So you're like, hey,
get you lubed up.
Yeah.
Before they just.
And so you're like, oh yeah, go on. And she was like, you need to push into the rings harder and turn them out. She said, see how you're like wrapping the rings around you? You're trying to find stability by wrapping them. She said, actually push them away from you and like press out of it a little bit. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, holy shit, like fix the position.
Wow. And
now I find myself teaching that detail to everyone because I find that everyone that learns a shoulder stand does the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, try this. And I'm like, holy shit, man. So, you know, yeah, maybe a bit obscure for some listeners, but that was like one of those things that fundamentally changed how I perform that movement.
Yeah, totally, man. And here's the thing, like you don't realize it till someone shows it to you and then you feel the difference. You're like, that makes all the difference. Like a huge detail for me when I was learning kettlebells was my coach at FIM was talking to me about the rack position and talking about having the kettlebell handle specifically going at 45 degrees across your hand, your palm, and putting pressure. I didn't know this, and I actually don't know the name of the cluster of nerve cells, but you have a bunch right at the corner of the pad of your hand, right here, that connects to your tricep. So if you're holding the kettlebell and it's not covering that part, you're missing a lot of drive through the tricep. So why do I say this? I was cleaning the kettlebell in a shitty way, and I was doing it, but every time I'd land, I didn't have this part covered. And he's like, well, your press, your overhead position, it's going to be shit. He kept adjusting it. But part of the reason why I didn't want to have it there was it meant the kettlebell was pressing into my forearm like fucking hard.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's a bit painful. And I said, Fim, could I get some, like, yeah, I'll do that rack position shit, but could I get some wristbands? Something. He's like, yeah, no, you can't. I said, but I could, right? I could just get some wristbands. No, Jimmy, no. And he was just like, no, you have to become conditioned. It should not hurt for a kettlebell to be on your forearm. And you do this until it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, boss, well, man me up. But that's the thing, right? It's similar. Once he showed me that and my press got significantly stronger, I now teach it to so many other people. Like, you pass it on down the line.
Yeah.
And now my forearms don't hurt at all. I could have the heaviest kettlebell on there. It doesn't matter. But it's just one of those things that you've got to take the time to pay attention to the details, and it can help you a lot. So I thought what we'd do is, because oftentimes whether you go to the gym and you're like, oh, this is my time away from the kids, this is my time away from the bullshit of the world, I don't want to think too much. This can be a problem whether it's jiu-jitsu or the gym, because there is key moments where you do need to pay attention. Whether you work with a trainer or say you come to a place like Jungle Brothers or CrossFit where you're in a group setting, there are moments when the coach needs your attention. And we all know it. Like, it's pretty routine. It's built into the system that the coach will be explaining what the fuck to do. But oftentimes, for various reasons, you might be like, just, did you see that Max Holloway? Oh man, that's right. You're at the back of the class talking shit, and you miss the lesson.
The whole coaching piece.
Yeah, you miss the point of why you're there. And I mean, the social aspect's really nice. But I believe whether it's in a training session or in a jiu-jitsu setting, there are moments when you need to pay attention. Like, you really need to lock in just that moment in time. And then, when you're rolling, whatever else, it doesn't mean you're not attentive, but you're not learning then, you're executing. So you've got to know that there are moments in that session, probably just 5 minutes or 10 minutes, where you really have to go, right, this is right, locked in. Right, here we go. And really try and if you miss it, you could always ask to follow up, but it's important. So for me, it's the point at which I need to pay attention in the gym is usually in the warm-up and the early lifts. Like, if I don't pay attention then I'm more likely to go too heavy or go too light, or if I don't listen to my body, then I'm more likely to not get the most out of the situation.
Yeah.
So that's what works for me.
Which you would say, that makes sense, doesn't it, for strength training? Where it's like the important stuff really is at the first half.
Yeah.
Once you've done the primary work, the accessory lifts are usually a bit more routine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd agree with that for sure. I think understanding that your attention is like a resource that's limited.
It's limited.
And so, if you're and I do this plenty, if you're training and you're looking at your phone in between sets and stuff and having those conversations, which we all do and, you should do.
Sure.
But if you're just doing it too much at the wrong times and you're like, I'm giving attention to something that's not why I'm here, then I think it can easily flip the scales to, oh, now I'm just f***ing around.
Yeah.
So I certain times I will walk away from people or conversations or cut them short because I'm like, this is I've been standing here talking to you for 4 minutes now. I'm really only meant to be resting about 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And you feel yourself doing it, right?
Yeah. Do you find you get thirsty at training? I do. I do all the time. I'm a sweaty human and I need to hydrate. Now, the biggest problem is by the time you're thirsty, it's a little bit late. You need to hydrate. And that's why we got Sodi. Sodi is sponsoring the show. We've got all the colors of the rainbow. Great flavors here. We've got salty citrus, salty pineapple, salty berry, and my favorite, salty grapefruit. And they will be releasing 2 new mystery flavors soon. So why do we need this? It's going to prevent our muscle cramps. It's going to help our energy delivery. And it's also going to mean you're less tired, which is an advantage when you're training. If you want to maximize your jiu-jitsu and feel good when you're rolling, you need to get Sodi. And when you purchase enter the code bulletproof20 at checkout for 20% off. Oh, yeah.
I also cut myself slack sometimes where it's like, just getting here today was the win.
Sure.
And I'm going to get the sets done. It's going to be one of those sessions, no problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think having a check on that. Same with jiu-jitsu. I think jiu-jitsu is largely easier to kind of get into because you don't have to go and pick up the weight. You've just got to sit there and listen and then do the drill.
Yep.
And then it's like, hey, it's probably only going to be about 20 minutes of this, and then you're just rolling, right?
Yeah.
So I think actually just paying attention and being like, trying to like doing your best to be present at that time when the coach is talking. I think you mentioned something in the past about
Not being too comfortable.
that was one. Yeah.
So I sit in a bent Caesar
Yeah.
because for most people, like most jiu-jitsu folks, if you've done it long enough, it's not always easy to sit on your heels, but tucking the toes under and sitting like that, it's okay. Like I can do it, but I don't feel relaxed.
Yeah.
So because I'm a little bit uncomfortable, I can't relax mentally. Like I can't just
It's not like the guy that we see them like
lean on the
lying down
shoulder
on
and just-
fully on their side. Like you're like, it's a bit comfortable. We've all done it.
That's a men's underwear catalog right there.
Yeah.
that's not paying attention at jiu-jitsu. And I will change my position. I don't want to actually get comfortable. I will
Stay
even
active.
stand up. Yeah, not in a distracting way. I don't want to take away from what the coach is doing, but I also don't want to. You know when you kind of relax your visual, like things blur slightly.
Yeah.
You know things kind of go out of focus a little
Unless
bit.
you're starting to fall asleep. It's like, oh shit, Adam's going with another analogy. I think I could just catch a little micro
Guys,
nap
it's
right
like
now.
a wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What y'all know about wheelbarrows?
But yeah, I think that, but also something about like, there's something in like say when I teach a drill and then I'm like, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
And no one's got questions.
Always. Yeah.
And then there's usually someone that often does have questions. And we've spoken about, of course, not all questions are created equal. But Ollie from Vantage is a great example.
Yeah.
He will always ask a very good question.
Yes.
And the question he asks indicates that he's really thinking about
Paying
it.
attention.
And he's thinking about, and this is, I'm just guessing here, but he's thinking about like, what do I not understand about this?
Yeah.
What is it about this technique that I can't put my finger on? He'll be like, what are you doing there in that moment? And you'll be like, oh, well, I'm actually, and often that question will cause me to explain something that I hadn't explained, that I hadn't thought about as part of the coaching process.
Yeah.
So for him, right, what I'm getting at here is he's found a way to engage, to be present, like by, maybe he asks himself that question, which helps him to ask the question to the coach.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just, like, as a mechanism, I think it's really good. When you look at everyone else, you're like, everyone got it? And everyone's like, yeah, got it. You're like, I reckon like maybe 80% of you don't got it.
Yes.
But let's go.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Because you don't always get it the first time.
No.
But in terms of this attention piece, the paying attention bit might actually not even be when the coach is talking. It might be when you're practicing the technique that you go, oh, my knee feels a bit weird. Like I'm trying to do this lasso thing and the outside of my knee hurts. Come to think of it, it doesn't feel right now. Like maybe you warmed up and you felt good, but maybe there's the classic thing, you warm up and then the coach goes, right, now you're all going to sit still for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you cool down. And then you start doing the technique, like depending on where you train. But here's the thing, like I feel in both circumstances, whether you're at the gym or you're at BJJ, you need to pay attention to the kind of physiological feedback. Like what's the body telling you? Like you might be trying to hold the grips and you're like, my grips are really weak today. That is also a sign that you're not fully recovered. Or, my ankle's really sore. I try and do that lasso and my ankle's sore. Paying attention to that can also mean that you're less likely to injure it when rolling. You like take a little note to yourself, like, got to be careful of that ankle, or I got to be careful with this knee. You might even say to your coach, hey, my knee hurts when I put my leg like this. And they're like, yeah, you're putting your leg wrong. Do it like that. And you're like, oh, now my knee doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And you may not know why, but paying attention in that moment might mean the difference between doing the technique correctly or completely f***ing yourself in the injury.
Yeah.
Like I think this is why I pay a lot of attention in warm-up and my early sets, because that's feedback about how are you today. And sometimes, and this is the thing I was trying to explain to a young lifter who I've noticed is a bit of a prodigy, this kid called Levi. He's 14 years old. Kid can back squat like 150 kilos. Like
Reasonable.
hell. Like he's 14. I'm like, this guy he's the future. But he came in.
Levi's are the future everywhere.
Everywhere. Jeans, baby. Genes. No. Here's the deal. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want the best gear for BJJ, you need to go to proprioceptively.com. These are our guys. They support the show. George, great guy, great creator, awesome colors, awesome styles, and also the best fit. It feels great. And that's the thing. It's not just that it looks good, it feels good. And the thing that for me, I love the most is I can wear the stuff at jiu-jitsu, but then also they've got that other side, the cool side where you can wear it off the mats. And they are our exclusive partner in apparel. If you want to get bulletproof gear, you've got to go to proprioceptively.com. And when you buy anything at checkout, enter bulletproof20 for 20% off. Oh yeah. So he came in, didn't warm up. He puts he's doing deadlifts, I'm doing deadlifts, and we're kind of facing each other on deadlift platform. What's up, young blood? What's up, man? Say what's up. He just goes 70 kilos on the bar, couple of reps, 120 kilos on the bar, couple of reps. And I'm like, hey, bro, I see you didn't warm up. He's like, no, I'm warming up. I did the lighter weight and I did that weight. And I'm like, yeah, but do you stretch or do you do any hopping, jumping? What do you? And he's like, oh, nah, never. I'm like, okay, you're 14. Okay, I kind of understand. He gets to his main set. He's like, my back hurts. I'm like, dude, you're 14. You shouldn't be. I'm a 40-year-old dude. My back's fine. But I actually have a fairly well-rounded warm-up. He's like, yeah, I just came from basketball. And I played footy this morning. And I'm like, okay, well, you're doing a lot, right?
Okay, high achiever.
Cool.
How many languages are you studying?
How many podcasts you listen to, bro? I'll double leg you into tomorrow. But no, it's funny. Just he completed his workout, but he couldn't correlate having a sore back with not warming up or not stretching. I'm like, do you ever stretch? He's like, when I was younger. Like, fuck off. When you were younger, when you were 10, come on now. And I said, man, you shouldn't be getting around with back pain at 14 years old. And I know you can deadlift 160 kilos, 180 kilos, but yeah, you're a strong kid, but you need to pay attention to your body coming in that maybe today is not the day that you lift 180 kilos. This is something for me. This is a habit I've developed. I always check in with myself. I do my ramp up sets. If I'm weaker on my ramp up sets, if the weight that usually feels like a 5 out of 10 feels like a 9 out of 10, I'm like, all right, today is not, doesn't matter what the program says, today is not the day that I go big. But in the same way, if I'm doing my warm up and I get to my working weight and it feels really easy, then I might give it a little bit more that day. And I think you can bring this kind of attention to jiu-jitsu as well. If you come in and you're like, man, I feel really good today. I've rehabbed my knee and I've been doing all the right stuff. Maybe you can go a little bit harder in the roll. But on those days where you're feeling sorry, you're feeling a bit more banged up, maybe you can play a bit more conservatively. Mm-hmm. This is where I think the attention to detail matters. It's not just in the skill acquisition, but it is also in the execution. That's kind of where I want to bring it to in terms of the discussion. And maybe we could just finish with for yourself, Joey, when do you find you're most switched on? Is it a time of day, or is it is it something that you can kind of pinpoint in terms of when you have your best training, whether it be lifting or jiu-jitsu? Certain sessions where you feel your best? Because you've changed your training times a little bit, right?
Yeah, I've shifted them around a bit, but I would say none of the times that I train are ideal for my training energy.
Okay.
But they're ideal for my life. Yeah, right.
So what would be ideal? How would you change it if you could just?
I think mid morning or mid afternoon would be real nice for anything.
Yeah.
Sort of 10:30 or a 2:30 kind of vibe.
Yep.
But if I'm training at that time in the afternoon, I'm getting anxious because I need to be getting home and organizing dinner and stuff like that. If I'm training at 10:30 in the morning, I'm like, man, this is my most productive work period.
Optimal email.
Yeah, right. Yeah, spreadsheets are now So, so I think that, so in that way that would actually, I wouldn't want to be training at that time.
Right.
I used to always say when I was doing lunchtimes at, for jiu-jitsu recently in the last couple of years or so, I really liked it for my training and for my, it felt great for my body and stuff, but it was shithouse for productivity.
Right.
Because it's 11:30, I'm just kind of I'm right in the thick of it, but it's it's time to go jiu-jitsu. And then you finish up at 2 o'clock, and then it's you get a late lunch, and then it's 3 o'clock that you...
Hard to get back into it.
Yeah, so, whatever, there's many parts to it. But, if I'm looking at what works for me mentally, at the moment, 5:30 jiu-jitsu class, 5:30, that works really well. 6:30, I'm getting a little bit sleepy.
Yeah.
I'm not sleepy actually, but
Just
I'm just
not-
fading out.
Not as attentive.
Yeah, and if you're training at 6:30, or if then it's you're usually not rolling hard until 7:15, and 7:30, it's that for me is not a time to be going hammer and tong.
Yeah.
But training at 5:30, if I can be going hard at 6:15,
Yep.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I've worked in the day, it's all done.
Yeah. I think the concession I've made is that I have to get my mental work done before I get my physical stuff in.
Right.
So if I'm learning or I'm doing anything that requires mental bandwidth, it has to be in the AM. It's got to be before lunch.
Yeah.
I can't leave any good decision making to later in the day because I just don't make I don't make good decisions after lunch.
Yeah.
But physically I can, lifting weights or doing jiu-jitsu or anything like that. And so I think understanding yourself, and we talked about training times before, what time of day is good to train. It's really worthwhile for you to consider, am I a bit more of a morning person? Am I a bit more of an evening person? Because wherever you pay your best attention, that's where you're going to get maximum value. So that's, you got to find what works for you, my friends, but paying attention to the details, whether it be in the gym or on the mat, will be a big unlock for your development.
Boom, boom.
Now, my friends, we need you. We need something from you because we love you and we want to see you live long and prosper. We would love for you to follow, and subscribe because it helps other good people like yourself. It helps us keep this show going. And also, it helps other good people see this. Also, if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please give us a 5-star rating because it helps it get shared with the community. Thank you.
Do it.